I don't think he takes it too seriously. This is just an interview. It's not like he's going to get dressed up or anything. I think he's a pretty serious guy. I don't know. I don't know that he's going to laugh a lot. Okay, Mom. Yes, I understand you think he has a sexy voice. Yeah, you know the guy that does the introductions and the wedding roasts? No, not actually cooking a roast for the holidays. Not like a pork roast. No. You know, where he makes fun of the people in the wedding party, basically. Yeah, he'll do those movie samples and things like that, like, Mom, the meatloaf! I am going to ask him about Star Wars. I'm a huge fan, too. No, that's Coldplay. No, and that's Radiohead. That's Queen. Oh, simple thing, where have you gone? Yeah, Keen, exactly. There you go.
I'm going to show you my costume. My girlfriend made me a sailor shirt, and I think my name badge fell off. I wore my royal stuff to represent, just in case.
Yeah. There you go.
I know. Birds get stretched a little, but oh my God.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it.
Going to see it IMAX 3D.
That's it. Thank you. That is exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, what if you have a couple that you're Welcome to episode 3 of DJ Center Stage TV. Our guest today is Peter Mary. Peter has been helping couples create fun and entertaining wedding receptions since 1992. He has presented seminars on wedding entertainment techniques, wedding marketing, and sales consultation skills to wedding professionals in over 60 cities across the United States, along with Canada, Mexico, the Bahamas, and the United Kingdom. He serves his clients as their wedding entertainment director, and he is currently entertaining at weddings across the United States. He's the founder of the Wedding Entertainment Directors Guild, and he is the author of The Best Wedding Reception Ever, the first guidebook for brides and grooms on creating an unforgettably fun wedding celebration. He has trained over 200 wedding entertainers from around the world through his 2-day workshop called The Professional Process. Finally, he is passionate about helping all wedding professionals to provide better calibers of services to their brides and grooms. It is my pleasure to introduce Peter Mary. Thanks, Peter, for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Now, you were the first professional in the industry who I discovered when I came across your book, The Best Wedding Reception Ever. You're actually on Channel 3 in Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut, with Keith Allen promoting your book. Now, Keith Allen was my wedding DJ back in 2004. So he opened my world to what DJing really was, and really inspired me to start pursuing that as a career. Because I thought it was just, you show up and you press play, but he really showed me some different things. So when I picked up your book, it was perfect timing for me because I was starting my own company and I needed a good place to start to reference some great ideas to help personalize a couple's wedding. It's a great resource for DJs and couples. Tell me how the book came to be. Did you perform a bunch of weddings and collect the material through each event that you did and write it over time?
Well, actually, the genesis for the book started with a seminar. I was doing bridal shows in the late 90s, and I hated them because it was like a cattle call. All the brides would walk by. Sometimes they'd even moo a little, and they would never talk to me or want to engage. And the only question they'd ever ask is price.
Yeah.
And I realized that if I could find a way to get them all in one room and do my sales pitch, but call it a seminar, I might do better. And so I offered tickets to a free seminar 2 weeks later, and I had 11 couples show up. And I actually thought that this was a devastating failure because I only had 11 couples show up. And I gave away a free wedding. So that meant I only had 10 to try and, get some weddings out of. Over the next 2 months, 8 of those 10 brides and grooms booked my services. So it was actually a very profitable venture. And the seminar was called Planning the Perfect Wedding Reception. I have since come to recognize that the word perfect should never be used in reference to weddings. It sets too high of a standard for brides, and it's not fair. But what I really started to recognize was I put all that information together in a little booklet that I would give to my clients when they were meeting with me, because I knew that the information I was giving them was helpful, and it was from the entertainment point of view, which nobody was talking about. And I'd go into the bookstores, and I'd look at the wedding magazines. I'd look at the wedding planning books. I'd watch the shows on TV about weddings, and whenever they talked about my job, they called me music. And it just frustrated the hell out of me because they never called photographers film. They told you to look for an artist with style and talent and capability, you know? And so I just got so frustrated. I finally went, you know what? I'm going to turn that seminar into a full-fledged book. And I came up with the title years later, but I literally started working on that book probably around 1999, 2000. And it wasn't until 2007 that I finally got it completed. It has a lot of ideas of things I've done in my own weddings and stories from my own weddings, but it also has ideas that have been submitted by other entertainers who I respect.
Right.
And every single time that one of their ideas gets used, they're cited in it. And if you go to the website for the book, thebestweddingreceptionever.com, you can actually see who's credited with contributing to it and go right to their websites.
Right. In personalization, that's something you're very well known for, more specifically, personalization of introductions. When was it that you first started to do this, and what was the reaction from the guests at the first event that you had the personal introductions?
Well, actually, the very first time that I did an expanded or personalized introduction was an event where I was subcontracting for another company.
Mm-hmm.
And about 20 minutes before the grand entrance, somebody from the wedding party came over and handed me a sheet that had short little bios written about every person in the wedding party.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm reading them really quickly, trying to prep myself because I'm used to just saying names. That's what every DJ does, right? That's the way it's always done. And so I'm reading through these things, and as I'm reading through them, I'm realizing this is actually a really cool idea, but it would have been a lot better if I'd had a chance to prep for it and maybe even add some touches to it. So I delivered it, and then I talked at the time with my partner, James Laram, who owns Last Dance Entertainment, and we went back and forth about ways to embellish more with it and maybe even include sound bites and sound effects. And he was actually the first one to start doing that, and he actually put together a tape cassette that had all of his clips ready to go, and he would hit play, pause, play, pause, play, pause, so the clips would fire while he was doing what he was doing. And it just grew from there. And what we came to recognize was that when you introduce the wedding party members with an actual introduction, which when you just say their names, you're not introducing anybody. You're just making an announcement. You're announcing somebody's name. An introduction requires personal information that helps build rapport and build a connection between people or two people that you're introducing to each other. And so if all you do is say their name, all you did was announce them because they still know nothing about that person. They don't even know the most basic thing of who are they to the bride and groom. And so we just started expanding on it from there and then looking for opportunities to add in humor, whether it be with a punchline or whether it be with a sound clip or a song clip. And as a part of that, we even took training in stand-up comedy, learning how to write humor and how to deliver humor. It comes back to recognizing that all of us, whether we realize it or not, as wedding entertainers are part of the performing arts industry. And too often I think DJs think their job is to play music and make announcements. And there's so much more to it than that. And when you can take any kind of training, whether it's Mark Farrell's Love Story Workshop, or like I did, the stand-up comedy class, or taking an acting class or a speech class, anything that will help you be a better performer, it will give you more confidence and be better at presenting material. I've shown video to brides and grooms of DJs attempting to do these kinds of personalized intros who don't know how to do a cold read and don't know how to read it with emotion and timing. And it comes off so bad and so awkward that the guests are kind of like, ooh, you know, and on occasion you might even say, people say, yeah, I've seen that. I don't know that I want that. Well, that's because they saw somebody else do it badly.
Right.
And so my encouragement to people is to not attempt to do this in a big way right out of the gate, but instead take baby steps, like What About Bob would say. And when I say baby steps, I mean things like try adding in 4 or 5 words that connect the dots on who that person is to the bride and groom. So now instead of here's Joe Schmo, you could say it's Frank's friend from college, Joe Schmo. And you've just connected the dots on who that person is before saying their name or after saying their name. And now the guests feel a connection. And then you build from there. And that's when you can start adding in data like what they do for a living, or if they're married or single and what that looks like, and what their hobbies are. And as you're discussing those things, if things come to mind that can add humor and that fits the client's personality, by all means, start going in that direction. But I'd say start small. Every MC that watches this and listens to this, if they were to say, what can I do to connect the dots, and just say who they are to the bride and groom, if you added just that element to your grand entrances starting this weekend, I guarantee you people would come up and ask for your card, because it's not like any grand entrance they've ever seen, just on that basic level.
Now, I'm sure it varies event to event too, but how much prep time do you put into personalized introductions? Like, what's the range of times?
There's a lot of factors that go into determining how much is going to be said and how it's going to be delivered and how it's going to be staged.
Yeah.
I have a DVD product titled 10 Layers Deep, which gives 10 different layers of personalization and fun that can be added to grand entrances. It's a great way to kind of start adding those layers one at a time until you feel more comfortable. But I can tell you from experience, when I first started doing these and started writing the script and putting together sound bites and putting together the music beds, it would take me a good 7 or 8 hours of prep time just to pull off a grand entrance that lasted less than 10 minutes or 8 minutes, you know. And at the time, it was a lot of work, but I was willing to do it because I saw the payoff. And the payoff was people coming and asking me for cards immediately, not later when they were dancing and they saw the DJ side of what I did. They saw an MC do something they'd never seen before, and that got me huge demand. But nowadays, because I've been doing these kinds of grand entrances for probably 16 years now, I can put together a grand entrance from the interview I do with the bride and groom and the details they give me, put together the script and get everything formatted and ready, probably take me about 2.5 hours. And that's interviewing them, collecting the data, writing the data, formatting the music and the sound bites. There are sometimes it's a little bit longer depending on the size of the wedding party or depending upon the way I do it. I have a couple of weddings that I share in some of my seminars where I'm actually standing away from my booth. I have my iPad on a stand and I'm using a remote to fire all of my music and clips. I don't have an assistant at my booth, so nobody can see how I'm doing this because the remote's in my hand, and the music bed transitions to a sound bite and then right back to the music bed. And to format that and make it sound natural takes a little bit more prep time. But the wow factor of people going, how in the hell is all of that happening? And he's not even at his DJ booth. That wow factor really is worth putting in that time and effort.
Sure thing. And so you've explained how the technical aspects have evolved over time with the 16 years you've been doing this. So looking back with the presentation of this, how do you see from the first time you did this right up until your most recent event, how has your style evolved or changed at all as time has gone on?
Some of the things that have changed is I've learned in some instances to just be more concise. I'll give you an example of a story that literally helped me make this a true success. I did a wedding when I was first doing these where the bride and groom loved the idea so much, they gave me very, very detailed information that was single line space, half page at about a 12 size font. So you can imagine it's a lot of content. That was for each person, okay? I introduced 12 people into the wedding party. It took 25 minutes to introduce the entire wedding party. And we created a loop based on some music that they wanted, which was maybe 16 bars repeated over and over again for that 20 to 25 minutes, which probably by the end of it was the opening strains to Ants Marching by Dave Matthews. Every time I hear it, I remember that grand entrance. And it was funny, it was entertaining, but I had a gentleman come up on the stage when I was done, and he started off by saying, I just want you to know that was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in a wedding. He says, but I also need to let you know it was way too long. And we're waiting to eat, and that seemed like it took 25 minutes, and I had to go back and check, and it probably did, you know? Yeah. And if it hadn't been for that gentleman being willing to say that, I probably would have seen demand for what I was doing go down because it was too long. And instead, I was able to make a correction and say, instead of letting the client write a half a page of content, I'm going to gather the content, and now I'm going to write it. And I'm going to pick and choose what goes in and what doesn't, instead of giving them. And so I quit submitting my script for them to review because they would want to add in more content and it made it too long. It was my job to make it a good introduction, and if possible, get to the funny and get to the fun parts. And so I started taking more control of it that way. And that was probably one of the biggest evolutions I made that probably turned it into one of the biggest career makers for me. Was now I controlled it. Now it was short. Now I was able to deliver a fantastic product. And it was all because that gentleman told me the truth. And I can tell you from experience that it's very rare to get it from the guests for a couple of reasons. Number one, they're usually just impressed that the DJ wasn't drunk. And number two, they don't necessarily know how to give us the kind of feedback we really need. And that's why one of the other game changers for me was bringing along other people to watch what I do and give me critique. The very first person to ever come watch me at a wedding was Mark Farrell. I shared the story in a seminar in a in a line where I said, you know, we were sitting at Denny's afterwards, and he said, "Do you want me to be nice, or do you want me to rip you a new one?" And I was like, "Rip me a new one. I'm not going to get better if you're nice."
Right.
But by doing that with several different people that I respected, I had another game changer for my grand entrances that totally opened a new door for me.
Huh.
My good friend Andy Austin, whose party I was just at this weekend, was in Southern California and made arrangements to come ride with me on a wedding. I had already done this for him and given him critique, so now he was returning the favor. And when we got done, he only had like 3 or 4 things he really wanted to bring to my attention, but they were huge. And one of them was that when we did the grand entrance, the bride and groom were lined up outside of the wedding party. They came in 2 at a time. The bride and groom were trying to peek to see what was happening, but they couldn't see what was happening. And I said, I know that's part of the staging with this thing. It's really fun, but because the bride and groom come in last, they usually have to see the video to see how the whole thing turned out. And he says, why? And I said, what do you mean? He said, why don't you bring the bride and groom in first and then bring in the wedding party? And in my mind, I was like, you can't bring in the bride and groom first. That controverts all the laws of nature and the universe and science, and everything will explode. And, you know, they're the guests of honor. They come in last. That's the way it's always been done. You can't change that.
Yeah.
And then he proceeded to walk me through it. He says, what if you brought them in first? Everybody went nuts. And then the wedding party comes in and stands next to them. And while you're giving them a hard time, they get to actually engage with them and poke each other and laugh. And now the audience gets to watch not only the reaction of the bridesmaid and groomsmen, but the bride and groom. And they realize the bride and groom put you up to this, so it makes even more laughter.
Oh.
Not only that, it makes better photos and better video. And all of a sudden, my eyes got opened up. And the funny part was, the very next weekend, I'm at a wedding, and it was going to be in a ballroom. So the bride and groom come in last, right? They're all out in the hallway. And the photographer is the guy who shot the cover of my book. And on the cover of my book, there's a picture of a wedding party member getting introduced and laughing. And you can see the bride and groom in the background because it was an outdoor location. And he said, I love the way that photo looked. Is there any way we could recreate that here? And I'm like, you mean have them in the room when they do the grand entrance? He said, yeah. Is there any way we could bring them in first? And if it had not been for Andy, I would have told him, no, that goes against the laws of nature and science, and the universe will explode. We can't change that. But I was like, as a matter of fact, yes, we can. And so I brought him in first, and it rocked. And here's the takeaway. I don't do that at every wedding. But at the weddings where it fits to have the bride and groom come in first, I absolutely have that in my toolbox now. And it's another amazing layer of differences that can be added to that presentation. And it came about by inviting somebody I trust to watch me and then shutting up and listening to what they had to say.
What's the craziest thing that you have ever seen at a wedding? Just, I know this is kind of going off the topic of introductions, but just in general, just tell me that.
If I had to think back on that, a couple of different things I can think of. One was a wedding where, as the bride and groom were finishing cutting their cake, one of their guests was getting some coffee, and they had open flames in these little containers, little votive candle containers.
Yeah. And
a lady in her 50s wearing a polyester top got too close, and the polyester caught fire. And you saw a flash of light. You saw a photographer jump in and rip the top right off of her. They were going to have to take her to the hospital because it did melt and cause a few injuries. And the bride was about to lunge towards this woman, and somebody else grabbed the bride so that she didn't. And it was just one of those moments where you're like, I can't believe this just happened right in front of us. And the bride and groom were planning on coming inside and doing a few more festivities on the agenda. And I told them, I said, that's not going to work right now. Everybody's seen something that just kind of scared them a little bit. So I'm going to suggest that instead we just do some disco type music, and you guys come in and dance, because if you're on the dance floor, they're going to do what you're doing. And so you come dance for about 15, 20 minutes, then we'll move on to our other festivities. And as we started the disco music, I immediately realized that I couldn't play Disco Inferno.
Oh, yeah, I was
just
thinking that song, yeah.
And every single song that fit like that came into my head, and I'm like, can't play that. As a DJ, they all started coming into my head. But that bride called me the next day and left me a voicemail message, and she said, I couldn't leave for my honeymoon without thanking you for doing such a great job at our wedding. And so it was one of those moments that, you know, it could have been really bad, and it could have taken everything down for the rest of the night, but we were able to still move forward. But yeah, that was pretty wild. There have been situations where I've had to get on the mic. I had a wedding where the groom's mom ate some shellfish that gave her that reaction you saw in Hitch, you know, where she started to swell up and was having trouble breathing, anaphylactic shock, I think they call it.
Yes.
And so an ambulance pulled up, and everything stalled for a few minutes, and the guests were wondering what was going on. And so in that instance, I got on the mic and I said, here's the situation. Here's what's happening. She's going to be okay. They're going to take her to the hospital, but she's going to be okay. But I can tell you right now that the groom's a little shaken up. as I'm sure any of you would be as well if it was in your, situation, but they still want to cut their cake and they still like to celebrate. And so I'd like to ask everybody here to stay put, don't leave early. Let's wait till they come back. Let's participate in the cake cutting, and let's maybe dance a little bit more before they go, so that we end this on a good note for them. And that's the announcement that I made, and everybody rallied. Everybody came to be part of this and was willing to participate. But in that instance, I felt it was necessary to inform them because it was a place that was spread out in a couple different rooms, and it was a challenge. So
yeah, and I think that's where your talent comes in too, and being able to do that on the spot. And talking with couples and meeting with them and distinguishing yourself and your services from other DJs and MCs, how do you sell couples the idea of personalized introductions? If it's something they haven't seen before, how do you do that?
It can be a challenge, and I found that very often what happens is, as MCs, when we try to sell ideas, we come across as, this is going to be a great idea and I think you should try it. And when that approach is used, more often than not, the client will choose the safe route. And so you'll see DJs go, would you like me to just say their names, or would you like to add some more information and make it fun and make it more personal? And they're like, ooh, that sounds like a lot of work, and I've never seen it before. Let's go with the names. And then the DJ comes back and says online on some Facebook group, all my clients ever want is just to say the names. I give them the choice, but they choose the names. Well, that's because you're giving them the choice, and you're presenting it as something you think would be a great idea. You have to make it something they think is a great idea. So the way that I sell this is I ask them about the last couple of weddings they've been a guest at. And when they were at that wedding, how was the wedding party introduced? 9 times out of 10, they've seen one where they played pumped up music, the wedding party came in, and they just said their names. And I'll ask them that. Did they do anything more than just say their names? No. Okay. And how many guests were there? Oh, about 200. And there were like 10 people in the wedding party, and you were part of 200 wedding guests. Did you know all the people in their wedding party? Well, no, I really didn't. Okay, so when they said their names and they came in, did you feel like you knew them any better at that moment? No, not really. Okay. What if we could find a way to bring in your wedding party in a way that would introduce them so that everybody in that room knew exactly who they were to you? Ooh, that sounds interesting. What if we could do that and maybe even add a little bit of layer of fun, maybe even add music that fits for each person if you wanted to? Now all of a sudden they're going, this could get really creative. And you're feeding them the information to let them connect the dots and say, wow, this would actually be much better than just saying me. And so what you're doing is you're helping them identify a problem. Then you're uncovering a solution that can make it really much better and more meaningful. And then when you finally get to the point, if you have some video you can show them, great. If you don't, you've at least painted a picture for them of what it can be, but you've gotten them open to the idea of creating something more personal and unique. I did this at DJ Times live, doing one of these kind of video chats with a bride who was in Washington State. She'd seen me in a wedding, but I asked her about some weddings she's been to in the past where this happened. And when I said, how did it make you feel when they introduced the wedding party, you just said their names and you didn't know who they were? She said, it was weird because I kind of felt left out. I was a guest at this wedding, but I felt left out. And so getting them to identify that awkward feeling and realize, that's really not the way it should be. What if we did this instead? All of a sudden the light bulb goes on and they go, you know what, that would be great. And the cool part is once you've done a few of them, you then have video footage, which makes it easier to show them so they can actually see the reaction the crowd has as well. But also you're going to start getting referrals from people who've seen it. And the number one reason why they're calling you is because they like that and they want that at their wedding. And then you don't have to sell it at all. They're selling you.
You could take that approach creatively and paint a picture with anything, whether that's personalized introductions, whether it's an introduction of the first dance or any other special moments throughout the evening.
The other thing is that it creates the opportunity for more of the same with every aspect of that day, because now you've opened them to the idea that this wedding is going to be about you and what fits for you, instead of coming in and going, so I'm a DJ and an MC and I really like to do this and I really like to do this and I really like to do this. Well, we don't care. This is our wedding. Right. We're not hiring you because of what you like to do. We're hiring you because we want what I want our day to be. And my biggest pet peeve is I've gone to DJ shows where they get up and start sharing ideas, and some guy will pop up and go, what I always like to do. And I'm like, shut up. It doesn't matter what you always like to do. Figure out what your clients would like and create something unique for them, you know?
Yeah.
And I had a coordinator once who was at a site meeting with me, and she told the bride and groom, I really like to bring the bride and groom in and have them do their first dance right away. It just changes the tone and it sets it, you know, I just think that's the best way to go. And I said, well, that's great, but look at our setting. We've got the dance floor inside a little box on top of a rooftop with a whole courtyard outside. Are we going to make all the guests come into that little box and watch the first dance and then go back out to sit down? Don't think that's going to work very effectively. Maybe we should save the first dance to the end of the meal. She was like, oh, that's a good point. But if we listened to the coordinator, we would have had a logistical nightmare on our hands, you know?
Yeah.
So I want to take away what I like to do, and instead my job is to open the clients to the possibilities. I'll tell them, I'm going to give you 6 or 7 choices. You pick the one you like. I don't have a favorite. My favorite is whatever makes you happy and whatever creates the results you want.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. It really is. And I think as a performer, as an MC, as a DJ, being able to get creative like that too, that's going to, that personally for me, that's going to excite me. That's going to get me excited about planning out, coordinating, putting together the event for that couple that is all about them, and being able to come up with some creative ideas together. There's just nothing better than that. You put a great example of personalized introductions up and showcasing your talents as a master of ceremonies, the Facebook group. If anyone wants to get a sense of that, you did an uncut raw footage of personalized introductions, and it was a blast, and just watching it was great. So it's a good example to check out. Great stuff. Great stuff. So how can other DJs make their introductions personalized? I mean, I script out quite a bit for events, especially introductions. Do you offer any assistance with that, Peter?
Yes, I've actually done script doctor work for people, and I'll share a story about that in just a moment. But since about 2011, myself and Liz Daly have also been offering a 2-day workshop just entirely on developing the most personalizing, unique, and creative grand entrances you are capable of. We're not trying to teach people how to do my grand entrance or her grand entrance. We're trying to help them identify their own unique voice as an entertainer, and then how to deliver that in a way that's going to make them look as polished as possible. And so we spend 2 days actually having them write, deliver their content, get critiqued on the content, and then do it all over again. Give them several different staging scenarios, several different writing scenarios. So by the time they're done, they've delivered probably 4 or 5 mini grand entrances in a variety of styles and staging. And it's really fun to watch the evolution, because sometimes at the start they're not so confident, and by the end of that second day, they're rocking it and ready to do a little surprise we have them do, where they're actually going to rip somebody up real good, kind of a celebrity roast kind of thing. And it's fun to watch the evolution of how they expand as entertainers and start to discover their voice. But going back to the script doctoring, I had a gentleman who'd gone through our workshop who wanted some help with the script, and he had a really challenging one. And he had one of those stories that was completely inappropriate, and yet the groom really wanted to tell it. And so the question was, how do you deliver this story without offending grandma? You know, what are you going to do? And the story was about one of the groom's best friends, and how they had found a kitten or some small little animal that he was taking care of, and it disappeared, and they asked what happened, and the groom basically tried to make a joke that resembled something like gerbil stuffing. And that hadn't happened, but he was inferring something like that about his friend, and the friend's mom found out about it and freaked out and thought this was legit. And he's like, no, it's just a joke, we're just kidding. And so he was like, is there any way to tell that story as part of the grand entrance? I'm like, you cannot say he took a small animal and shoved it up his butt. I'm sorry, you just can't do that. You can't make that part of a grand entrance. So what are you supposed to do? And so so I said, it was actually a small baby squirrel. That's what it was. And so I wrote in the script for him to say that his friend is also somewhat of a magician, because those guys can take a rabbit out of a hat, but you should see what he can do with a baby squirrel. So the people who knew were just losing it, and the guy himself is turning beet red, but we didn't give it all away. And so grandma would have been like, well, what does that mean? You know? And it was just the perfect way to craft those words to get the punchline we needed. So, you know, I've done that for people from time to time, but I found that if they come and take a workshop, they're going to learn how to write for themselves in their own voice, and it's going to start to work for them. And I encourage everybody who comes to any of the training that I offer to take improv classes, and especially stand-up comedy. learning in a 7-week course how to write comedy, how to deliver comedy, how to get to the funny, how to make it more concise so that you can take a big story and make it short. All of that is part of what you learn in stand-up comedy training. And there is an art and a science to it. And learning the science part will make you better at the art part, but you have to take the time to learn it. And it's not something you get just by reading a book or watching somebody else's videos. I love sharing the videos of my grand entrances and getting reactions to it. My fear is that people will go out and try to do some of the same lines, and it's not their voice. And so it's going to fall flat, and then they're not going to get the impact that they need and that they deserve. So I would recommend anybody who wants to explore some of this training, check out the DVD I have called 10 Layers Deep, and check out our workshop. In addition, I have a new product that I recently released that I've never done before, just as a primer to help people get started. I offer a jump drive that has several scripting templates. And all you have to do is put in codes to plug in everybody's name where they belong, but they're formatted for different kinds of staging. So if you're bringing the bride and groom in first, and then everybody else is coming in as couples, that would be one staging. If the bride and groom are coming in last, but we're bringing the wedding party one at a time, that would be another staging. And how your script is set up and organized is kind of a time-consuming thing.
Yeah,
that's so I've created PowerPoint and Keynote scripts.
Yeah,
where you can plug those in and you can get those done on your own, and it's just going to save you so much time. That product's like only $30, and those are now literally all over the world.
Wow. Well,
so
yeah.
DJs all over are already starting to use it. Yeah.
That's wild. And I think of it myself, and when I'm writing scripts or introductions, I think that for me is the least exciting of just doing that, plugging the names in, obviously, because that's just time, 20, 25 minutes that so if you have something like this to take advantage of, that it'll just take care of it, that's perfect.
And to make the product even more helpful, of the different stagings that are set up, I created YouTube videos that are non-published, so you have to have the link to see them.
Okay.
And I provide the links to all the different staging options so they can go watch videos and see how the staging was set up and use those as a primer. And those are all uncut videos. So by the time you get done watching all the video content that's included as part of this, you're talking over 2 hours of video content as well that can help you understand the staging and the setting up of the humor and all that fun stuff.
Nice. That's awesome. So I'm backing up, just talking about MCs. So if MCs watch DVDs of introductions and having them fall flat, for example, because they're copying lines and different things like that, I think you have to be very careful about that. And I think, unfortunately, and unconsciously or consciously, whatever way you want to think about it, I think there's a lot of MCs out there that they'll see something amazing that they've never seen before, and they're excited to try it, but then they do that exact thing because they want to produce the same results, obviously. So I think you have to, and you brought up a good point about that, is to really dive deeper into it in the process of making it yourself, so it comes across that way, right, and it's more real to you as the performer.
Yeah, it also doesn't hurt to see how others do what they do and take good notes on it, but you still have to add your own personal style into it. One of the best examples I can give, I have a game that's in my book that's called the Dollar Pass for the Centerpiece giveaway. And you play some music and they pass the dollar around the table, and whoever the winner is, they get to keep the dollar. Whoever donated the dollar actually won the centerpiece. And I would do that at my weddings, and I would get one pretty good laugh at the end, but the way I identified who the winners were was a little too rushed. And so oftentimes they got confused because I was rushing the reveal at the end. So then I go and watch Randy Bartlett do a wedding, and he does the same activity, completely different result, because his timing was spot on, and he added in little tricks along the way. So instead of just doing the game one time through and identifying a winner, he did a couple of fake endings and got a good laugh out of it, then kept going until he finally got to the real ending, and then timed it just right on each line so that he got by the time it was done, he got 7 huge laughs through this whole activity that I usually got one kind of muddled one,
Right.
And so I realized that there were techniques that I could to make it better, but at the same time I was still able to offer him critique, because the game starts with one person at each table holding up $1, and Randy told them to do it, but he didn't show them. And so I showed him one of my little techniques, which was to take out an actual dollar and hold it up in your hand. If I show rather than just tell, it makes it more effective and people follow along quicker. And he was like, oh, I should have thought of that. I'm like, thanks, I can teach Randy something.
little things like that make all the world of a difference. And that's what Randy is all about with his 1% solution. Small changes for bigger results. And can you share just ways that other DJs, MCs who want to improve can get in touch with you?
Sure, absolutely. I'm pretty easy to find. It's petermerry.com. That's MERRY, just like Merry Christmas. My family always has a Merry Christmas, no matter how dysfunctional we are. I'm also available at merryweddings.com. But primarily for my training and my products, you're going to want to go to thefunweddingexperts.com. And on the homepage, you're going to see upcoming workshops that I have. Like just a couple of weeks from now here in Kansas City, I'm going to be offering my professional process for 2 days. And that's just nothing but content. I tell people it's like drinking from the fire hose. And by the time it's done, I'm pretty tired because I've done nothing but instruction for 2 straight days. And then we have a Make It Grand workshop coming up at ARM DJs this summer in June. Going to be a fantastic event. Should check out the lineup on that too, because it's worth attending just to learn on that level. And then if you go to the products page, you'll see my DVDs and you'll see the new USB product that features the blank scripting templates. But there's also coaching information on there and just a lot to pick up on there. So they can also email me, peter@thefunweddingexperts.com or peter@merryweddings.com. Either one of those would work just fine.
Perfect. And I'll include that information too in the clip description on YouTube for anyone that wants to contact Peter. It's available there as well. So that's all the time we have today, folks. Thank you, Peter, and all that you do in the industry. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.